They called it safe as houses. For the Victorians, home was not just shelter. It was pride, progress, and proof of civilization. Within those four walls, the middle class displayed everything that the Industrial Revolution had promised: comfort, invention, and status. By the middle of the 19th century, the cities of Britain were swelling with new wealth. Millions left the countryside to join the rising urban classes, eager to fill their homes with the latest marvels of modern industry. For the first time, the family stove warmed every room. Gaslight filled parlors once lost in candlelit gloom. Factory-made toys delighted children. Mirrors and cosmetics beautified bedrooms, and the home sweet home ideal was born. But this dream hid a truth the Victorians could not see. Because inside their safe havens, they were being slowly poisoned by the very inventions that made their world so proud. This was the age when progress became peril, and every room of the Victorian house was a potential death trap. The story begins in the drawing room, the heart of the home and the most dangerous place of all. After the Great Exhibition of 1851, consumer fever swept Britain. Goods that once belonged only to the elite were now mass-produced and affordable. The new middle classes wanted to live like the aristocracy, or at least to appear as if they did. Every table groaned with ornaments. Every wall was crowded with pattern and color. Gaslight made it all possible. For the first time, ordinary homes were bright enough to reveal rich, deep hues: crimson, gold, and most of all, green. Green became the color of taste, calm, and refinement. Manuals like Cassell's Household Guide urged readers to choose it for the drawing room, calling it a shade of repose and grace. And among all the greens available, one shone above the rest: Scheele's green. Named after the Swedish chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele, this pigment produced a radiant, almost glowing emerald tone. It did not fade. It did not dull. It looked alive. And so it appeared everywhere: on wallpapers, fabrics, artificial flowers, candles, and even children's toys. But Scheele's brilliant green had a secret ingredient: arsenic, one of the deadliest substances known to science. At first, no one suspected. Victorian homes were filled with strange illnesses: headaches, stomach pains, swollen throats, mysterious deaths. Doctors blamed the usual culprits: bad air, spoiled food, or cholera, which had haunted Britain for decades. No one thought to question the wallpaper. But as deaths continued, suspicions grew. Medical journals began to notice a pattern. Families who left their homes, even for a few weeks at the seaside, miraculously recovered. Their parrots, their pets, even their servants, all revived. Yet the moment they returned, sickness struck again. One doctor, Thomas Heinz of Birmingham, examined such a case. His patients suffered inflamed eyes, sore throats, and headaches. Even their bird drooped lifeless on its perch. The only change in their house? 2 rooms newly papered with bright green wallpaper. Heinz took samples and began to test them. What he found was astonishing. The vivid color came from copper arsenite, a compound that could turn lethal under the right conditions. In the damp, poorly ventilated houses of industrial Britain, fungus and moisture combined to release arsenic gas into the air. It was odorless, invisible, and deadly. Each breath brought small doses of poison into the blood, attacking organs, nerves, and skin. And so the elegant sitting rooms of the respectable middle class became silent chambers of slow death. By the 1860s, The Lancet and the British Medical Journal were warning of mysterious mortalities linked to arsenical papers. Still, Wallpaper manufacturers denied everything. Some even offered to eat their products in public to prove they were safe. Profits were too large and regulation too weak. One of the most shocking figures entangled in this scandal was William Morris, the celebrated designer, poet, and father of the arts and crafts movement. Morris, who preached simplicity and purity in art, was also the director of Devon Great Consols, the largest arsenic-producing mine in the world. When customers complained that his wallpapers were making them sick, Morris dismissed it as witch fever. To him, talk of arsenic poisoning was superstitious nonsense. But even royal palaces were not immune. Queen Victoria herself reportedly had a guest collapse overnight after sleeping in a room decorated with green wallpaper. When the incident reached the newspapers, the public mood changed. Though the government never formally banned arsenic in wallpaper, the people did. Manufacturers rushed to label their goods arsenic-free, and by the 1870s, the craze had begun to fade. Yet the damage was done. For decades, British homes had exhaled invisible poison, killing quietly and without warning. It is impossible to know how many lives were lost to the Victorian passion for beauty, but in almost every household, the walls themselves had been deadly. If the drawing room was a trap of arsenic and ambition, the bedroom was a stage of sacrifice, where the Victorian ideal of beauty demanded its price in pain. For women of this age, elegance was more than fashion. It was duty. It was morality. The angel of the house, as poets called her, was expected to embody restraint, purity, and grace, all wrapped tightly in the fabric of a corset. To be a proper lady was to be laced. The corset was more than underwear. It was a statement of discipline and virtue. A loose figure suggested loose morals. A firm waist, properly bound, reflected a firm character. Even the poorest women, serving in households or factories, were urged to wear one, a visible sign that they too aspired to refinement. A typical corset of the 1860s was a cage of steel, whalebone, and stiffened cotton. Under it lay layers of linen and petticoats, sometimes weighing more than 6 kilograms. It pressed the body into the fashionable shape of the day: a narrow waist, high chest, and broad hips. And as the century wore on, the waist grew smaller, until some women boasted measurements barely 20 inches around. The invention of the metal eyelet made this even more extreme. Before, fabric tore under tension, limiting how tightly one could lace. Now, metal reinforcements let women pull harder, and the ideal shifted from elegance to endurance. Training the waist became a ritual. Some wore their corsets day and night, tightening them gradually over weeks. Others competed to achieve the fainting silhouette seen in fashion plates and magazines. Actresses, socialites, and even schoolgirls chased this impossible form. But beauty had a cost hidden beneath the silk. Doctors began to notice strange deformities in women's bodies: livers flattened by ribs, stomachs forced down into the abdomen. In autopsies, the organs bore the imprint of the corset's steel stays. The ribs themselves had bent inward, carving grooves into flesh and bone. With lungs compressed, breathing became shallow and rapid. Women fainted at balls and recitals, not from swooning emotion, but from lack of air. Modern tests confirm what the Victorians did not fully understand. A corset could increase the resting breathing rate by nearly half, while cutting the amount of air per breath by up to 300 milliliters. Each inhale starved the body a little more. Chronic underoxygenation led to fatigue, infection, and sometimes pneumonia, especially for women already weakened by childbirth or poor nutrition. And yet, the corset was not optional. It defined respectability. Even pregnancy did not grant release. Maternity corsets, with panels cut away for ventilation, were sold to expectant mothers who feared deforming their unborn children's heads. The result was predictable: miscarriages, prolapses, and internal injuries, all in the name of modesty. But the tide was turning. By the 1880s, women were growing restless. Education, bicycles, and the early suffrage movement demanded freedom of mind and of body. The corset had become a symbol of oppression, its steel bones and armor against progress. The Rational Dress Society, founded in 1881 by reformers like Constance Wilde, declared war on it. They protested any fashion that deforms the figure or injures health. Pamphlets, lectures, and demonstrations called for looser clothing, breathable fabrics, and natural silhouettes. Some designers listened. By the 1890s, a new, softer style began to replace the rigid hourglass. Women who once fainted under pressure now walked, cycled, and worked freely, though society still judged them for it. Even so, the corset never truly disappeared. It had become a psychological habit as much as a physical one. The mirror rewarded obedience. A smaller waist meant admiration, self-worth, and status. The pain was invisible, the praise immediate. And that is why millions endured it. Looking back, we see the corset as an absurd relic, a cage for vanity. But the truth is harder. The Victorian woman's corset was not so different from the pressures that still shape beauty today. The pursuit of perfection remains. Only the materials have changed. Progress promised warmth and light. For the Victorians, comfort was a symbol of triumph, the conquest of darkness and cold by human invention. But in their haste to modernize the home, they built comfort on a foundation of risk. The very forces that lit their rooms and heated their baths could, without warning, kill them. In the early decades of the century, most families gathered around a single candle or oil lamp. By nightfall, houses fell into shadow. Then came gas, the wonder of the age. Gaslight transformed the Victorian evening. No longer did families huddle around a single flame. Now, every parlor could glow with steady brilliance. The new urban middle class saw gas as civilization itself, a mark of refinement, even of moral virtue. But the technology was young, unregulated, and deadly. The gas that flowed through pipes into homes, coal gas, wood gas, and the later water gas, was laced with carbon monoxide. It was invisible. It was odorless. And when leaks came, as they often did, death arrived silently in the night. Newspapers of the time recorded hundreds of cases each year. A mother and child found lifeless beside an unlit stove. A family suffocated when the flame flickered out in their sleep. Servants discovered unconscious after sealing windows against the London smog. There was no understanding of gas's invisible peril. Some companies even advertised it as pure and healthful. Others, in the race for profit, cut corners, lowering pressure at night to save money, which caused lamps to sputter out and fill homes with poison. It was the industrial age at its most reckless. Progress sold faster than knowledge could keep up. And when gas didn't suffocate, it exploded. The invention of gas-fired heating promised a revolution. Warmth throughout the house, no more sooty coal fires or freezing mornings. But the systems were crude. Boilers were sealed with cast iron so thin and brittle that even a minor flaw could become fatal. Water boiled, pressure built, and one stuck valve could turn a household boiler into a bomb. Reports tell of stoves erupting without warning, sending scalding steam and shards of iron through parlors and kitchens. Families sat down to supper. and never rose again. Engineers compared it to sitting atop a locomotive. The Victorians trusted their machines, but few truly understood them. Testing was rare. Safety standards were non-existent. Each new design was a gamble between convenience and catastrophe. In the kitchen, where invention met necessity, danger multiplied. Coal-fired ranges were sealed to keep heat in, but ventilation was poor. Fumes and soot built up quickly, turning ordinary cooking into a slow suffocation. Steam kettles, another prized innovation, had no release valves. A single careless moment could unleash boiling water across the room. Domestic servants, often teenage girls, bore the brunt of these experiments. Scalded, burned, or suffocated in the pursuit of a cleaner, more efficient home. By the end of the century, the next miracle arrived: electricity. But even this, at first, only added to the peril. Early electric systems were installed beside existing gas lines. Wiring was experimental, insulation crude, switches temperamental. One spark near a leaking gas jet could turn a living room into a fireball. It happened often. The Victorians were learning that progress never came free. Every new comfort carried its own hidden cost. Not until the 1920s did real safety regulations begin to appear, decades after thousands had already died. Yet few questioned the risks. A warm, well-lit home was worth almost anything. Comfort, for the Victorians, was proof of mastery, even if it meant courting death. Their faith in invention was unshakable. The middle classes believed that the modern home, packed with machinery and science, was a fortress against the chaos of the outside world. But it was an illusion. The danger was not beyond their walls. It was within them, in the flame that gave them light, in the boiler that promised warmth, and in every new device that made life easier and shorter. If the Victorian drawing room was a trap of arsenic and ambition, the nursery was a shrine to innocence. And yet, it too was built on poison. The Victorians adored their children, but their affection was often lethal. By the late 19th century, childhood had become sacred. Reformers celebrated purity and play, and a new market bloomed. Factories poured out toys, books, and bright decorations. Christmas turned from devotion to indulgence, and children became symbols of prosperity. But the very gifts that filled their world with color filled their bodies with toxins. Lead was everywhere, in paints, furniture, and toys. Its soft gloss made everything shine, and manufacturers saw no reason to stop using it. Children gnawed on painted wood, inhaled flakes of pigment, and absorbed poison through their skin. The effects were silent and slow: gray complexions, fatigue, stunted growth, and, in time, paralysis and death. Doctors learned to spot the faint blue line on a child's gums, the signature of lead poisoning. But by then, the damage was done. Lead's danger was known since Roman times. Still, the British government refused to act. While other nations banned it in household paints by the 1920s, Britain waited another 50 years. Generations grew up breathing in the legacy of progress. And yet, there was another killer in the nursery, one that struck at birth itself. The feeding bottle, hailed as a marvel of hygiene and convenience, was a perfect incubator for disease. Curved and narrow-necked, it could not be cleaned properly. Mothers tied on a rubber or animal skin teat and were told it would last 2 or 3 weeks. Inside the tube, milk clung to the walls, souring and feeding invisible armies of bacteria. Each sip delivered infection straight to the infant's body: dysentery, typhoid, or pneumonia. By the 1880s, more than 150,000 babies died every year before their first birthday. Many from the very bottles meant to keep them alive. Later designs, simple, straight, easy to wash, reduced the deaths. But the old, dangerous ones remained in use for decades. The Victorians had been told they were improving life with science. They were, in truth, perfecting the art of slow destruction. When the 19th century faded, the truth began to emerge. Doctors traced the sicknesses of a generation to the chemicals, corsets, and comforts of their homes. Chemists uncovered the arsenic in wallpapers. Engineers studied boilers and gas pipes that had exploded without warning. Microbiologists revealed how disease could grow unseen in milk and water. Knowledge finally caught up with invention, and safety began to replace faith. By the early 1900s, reforms appeared. Gas lines standardized, pigments cleaned, pressure valves added, hygiene understood. The idea of progress shifted, no longer measured by luxury or abundance, but by security. Science turned inward to protect the home, not just fill it. Still, the legacy remains. We live in their houses, breathe the air that once poisoned them, and walk on the floors they called progress. Their tragedy became our warning. Because every age has its hidden killers. For the Victorians, it was arsenic, gas, and lead. For us, perhaps plastics, radiation, or the invisible code of our own machines. Their homes were monuments to invention and laboratories of ignorance. From their suffering came modern safety, regulation, and awareness. But comfort has never been free. The Victorians believed they had mastered the home. What they truly mastered was a lesson: that progress without understanding breeds peril, and that the cost of comfort is always paid by those who never see the danger coming.